Introducing Recorded Content, a podcast for small, scrappy B2B marketing teams who want to get the most out of podcasting. In each episode, we capture stories from industry experts and podcasters. Listen in and uncover what it takes to launch, run, and grow a successful B2B podcast. Check out and subscribe to the show on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows. Let's jump in.
Hey, I'm Tristan. I'm the co-founder of Motion and your host for this episode of Recorded Content. This show is brought to you by my company, Motion. We are a done-for-you podcast agency for small, scrappy B2B tech marketers. Your company's marketing strategy heavily involves communicating how you solve a problem and why you're different than alternatives. And one of the ways to connect your message with potential customers is by embracing your company's biggest brand advocate, your employees. But instead of creating environments where employees want to share and connect with customers, most organizations struggle with employee advocacy programs. They resort to sharing content in Slack or asking employees to like company posts, and marketing teams really struggle when getting employees to embrace larger content initiatives like a company's podcast. Kerry-Ann Betton Stimpson is the CMO of the JMMB Group, a leading financial group in the Caribbean serving over 316,000 clients. Kerry-Ann also is a podcast host, producing a show called the Internal Marketing Podcast. And in this episode, we'll uncover how your company can build a culture of engaged employees and paint a picture of what it looks like to have an effective employee advocacy program. Kerry-Ann, thanks for joining me on Recorded Content today.
Hey, Tristan, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, I was doing some research on you. I was listening to quite a few of your interviews, not only for your podcast, but also some of the guest appearances that you've done recently. And something that you mentioned on a guest appearance was you referred to the internal marketing podcast that you run as a passion project. And I kind of took a step back and I said, I wonder what you're pursuing as that passion. Is it a passion to start a podcast, or was it a passion to pursue internal marketing as a topic and understand that further?
Right. Great question. Thanks so much for asking. So it's really more the latter. So the podcast really just came up as the vehicle ultimately, but it was really about a passion to drive a conversation. So I'm a CMO, all right? By day, that's my day job, and some nights too.
Yeah.
But I came to a point in my career after like 20 years in marketing. I said, I thought there was so much more that I needed to do. After all of my years of experience working in financial services, working in marketing, I said there had to be a way that I can kind of give back to the marketing community. And through a number of different activities, and that's a whole other conversation, I won't dig too deep into it, but coming out of those activities, I said, there must be a conversation that I can support in driving to help marketers to better achieve their objectives and also to be perceived as a more valuable part of the organization, because that's what I find a lot of us marketers we struggle with. In a lot of companies, we're still the party planning service or the ad placement department. We're not seen as a robust, valuable part of an organization when you're talking about achieving revenue and profitability objectives. And I said, there must be a conversation. And I had some conversations with CFOs, fellow marketers, people on the front line in support units, and the topic internal marketing came up. And the reason why I think it came up is first from a place of, again, folks in the organization not always understanding what marketing was, what it was doing, why it was doing it, and how it provides value. But I think what also came up is that we recognized that there's a huge untapped opportunity that marketers are not leveraging enough when you realize that your employees or the employees in a business, in a company, can really be powerful advocates. We focus a lot on our customers, which is great. I always say it's customers why we get to eat. But without our employees who serve those customers, who deliver on the brand promise, we can't be able to do what we do as brand builders, as revenue generators. And I'm like, what's this topic? It's internal marketing. I did some research and I'm like, let's have the conversation. And that's kind of where it started.
Yeah, and Carrie, when did you realize that that was going to be the topic you were going to pursue? I mean, was it something that you think was always bubbling under the surface throughout your career and you just didn't have a name for it? Or was it something where after maybe 20 years you were like, "Hey, this is something that I haven't really focused on and I need to." Which one was it, do you think?
I think it's a mixture of both. So when you talk about bubbling under the surface, so again, throughout my career, always trying to fight to prove marketing's value has been a constant theme of my experience. And it's like, well, what's missing, you know?
Mhm.
And when I, to go back to those conversations that I was having with all the different stakeholders across different companies, I spoke to this lady and she worked in a company as an employee, not in marketing. And she kept just going on about, well, she doesn't understand why doesn't marketing do things this way or what's driving the marketing strategy for the business. And she just really couldn't bring it together. And I guess as a marketer, I was trying to help her to understand that. And what she said was, you know, Kerry-Ann, if the marketing team would only onboard me in these conversations, I'd love to be a part of these conversations that are at the heart of how do we build this brand? How do we find ways to generate revenue, generate demand? If I could be a part of those conversations, I think there's be such greater alignment across the business. And I said, yeah, you know, that's a great idea. And it goes back to my own experience. There are so many missed conversations I could have had. And again, doing the research, is there a thing that says, well, do we market to our people inside the company? And Google internal marketing. It's a nomenclature that I think has been around since like the 1970s, but certainly a conversation that's not happening as often as it should. And I said, you know, hey, this is it. And is there a way that I can better leverage internal marketing in my own day-to-day job? And also, is there a way that I can support marketers in having a broader conversation? So it was a mix of both, I'd say.
Yeah, and as a CMO, how do you feel internal marketing helps you really position yourself as having a seat at the table, which you just mentioned?
So, what internal marketing does, it does a couple of things. So, the first thing is it's about engaging your people to buy into the mission, the vision, and the purpose of the organization. That's I guess the overarching definition of what it is. It also includes sensitizing and educating the team on your brand promise, your products, your services. And the ultimate objective of internal marketing is not just to tell the team about these things because it's nice to know. The objective is to engage and empower employees to be advocates of the brand, right? So I guess that's the finite difference. I tell folks there's a finite difference between internal comms and internal marketing. So internal marketing, like internal comms, is about driving engagement around all these things: the mission, the vision, the purpose, the products, the services, the happenings. But internal marketing takes that further. It says, how do we convert our employees into advocates of the company brand? So it's internal marketing that spins out into employee advocacy. So you can't have employee advocacy without internal marketing. And what that does for marketing is it really puts the marketing function in a very powerful position. Because when you talk about empowering your people, you're really talking about empowering them to deliver on the brand promise that you're telling your customers that you can deliver on every day. You're also creating what I'd like to refer to as an army of people who are carrying your brand message and your brand story to their own networks. When you think your employees are powerfully connected people with their own personal networks of friends, family, colleagues, community members, they're excited about where they work. They understand the brand mission. They understand what you do and why you're great at it. And they want to carry that story across to their communities as well. Think about that reach, that authentic, powerful reach that they're giving your brand that as marketers, we probably couldn't even afford to pay for with some of our limited resources, right?
Yeah.
So that's what it really does. It empowers the marketing function to be able to deliver on its mandate of generating demand, building brand awareness, and generating revenue. Because when you think about it, this army of people or who already have authentic connections can build that into what it is you're doing as part of your marketing strategy. And the outcome can be just fantastic beyond what you could probably have achieved from the official marketing channels.
Yeah, you mentioned brand awareness there, and we also hear the term dark social a lot,
Hmm.
especially in the context since the pandemic when people are at home a lot and they're engaging in communities and Slack groups, et cetera. Not necessarily places where you can see firsthand from analytics or something along those lines. And companies can't really engage in these, as an entity, like I'm a company, I can't really engage into a private Facebook group or a Slack community. And so it's really about those one-to-one conversations and relationships that are built. And I noticed, you had a post on LinkedIn around 4 months ago, and you said the first step to and I don't expect you to remember
That's
this post,
fine.
so
I probably do.
yeah, I have it here for you, but you said the first step to leveraging dark social as a company is to market internally to employees first, and so I thought that was a unique connection there. And you said there are 3 components to that, and I'm gonna read them here, and I would like us to go through these 3 because I thought this was a good framework.
Sure.
You said the first is engaging employees around the brand purpose and promise, which you
Hmm.
alluded to a second ago. The second piece was empowering them to
Hmm.
start building their own personal brands
Hmm.
online. And then the third was letting employees then create and share the content online and in these other communities. So let's start with that first one.
Hmm.
You said it's about engaging employees. So it's easy to say, let's get our employees engaged.
Yeah.
It's something that leadership can say.
Hmm.
But as like the head of marketing, and you're a CMO, and we work with a lot of scrappy marketing teams that are smaller in size, 3 to 5 people. How can a head of marketing or a CMO go about to build that initial, engagement with employees? What does that look like?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'd like to say that it starts with understanding the culture of your organization. And because the culture is going to dictate what's the best way you want to create that engagement, right? My company, I guess, is a little bit unorthodox in some ways in terms of not being your traditional bank or financial institution from a culture perspective. But you want to start with who are your internal stakeholders and opinion leaders. You want to onboard them. You want them to be a part of the conversation that helps get the message out that you want to send. So there's the formal side, I guess, of more education. Again, you're doing things like educating your employees on the products, the services that you offer, that they understand the unique value proposition that they provide. But also, you want to engage them in a way that's creative and unique. So, you're familiar with all the different tools that companies can use. So, you can launch your own internal podcast, right? That's
Hmm.
one. But we do things like we have like happy hours, So, know that we're on the other side of COVID, so to speak,
Yeah.
in a sense. We have like happy hours where the marketing team, and we've done this at our company, where the marketing team hosts a happy hour. It's all on marketing's tab, and we hang out usually at head office or at the place of business, and we have some drinks. You get a keg, you have refreshments, you got hors d'oeuvres, whatever, and it's just about hanging out, chatting, and building relationships and building that sense of partnership and community as a team, as a company. And then when you talk about, well, engaging them, it's creating that sense of a safe space. So what I find with, because we're going to get into it, I'm sure, when we come to the other points that I would have made in the post, is that a lot of companies tend to be very hesitant when we talk about employee advocacy or allowing or being comfortable with employees building their personal brand. But that first phase of engagement is going to be so powerful in the sense that you're going to have to create an environment where employees feel comfortable that, you know what, this is okay. This is a company where we're all aligned around the same purpose, the same vision, the same mission. We all want the same things. We want the best for ourselves, our families, our customers. We want the best for the company. And if we're confident in that, then we can partner with each other to achieve that. And that's probably a whole other conversation for a whole other episode. But creating that safe space of community and camaraderie and relationship within the company is going to be a huge determinant of how successfully you're going to be able to do employee advocacy down the road.
And Carrie, do you feel like that safe space is something that you've created as a CMO, or is that like inherently a part of your organization? What are your thoughts there?
I don't think that, well, I wouldn't give myself the credit for it. I would like to think that it's really part of our organization culturally at the root of it. So when you look at, well, what was the reason why your company was formed? And yeah, I mean, yeah, we wanted to make some money.
Hmm.
But I mean, that's why we're in business. But ultimately, we want to get to the heart of, well, what do we stand for as an organization? What do we stand for? Define that. Let's hold to that. Are we living our values every single day? Are we attracting and hiring, recruiting people who are aligned with those values as well? And then once we know those base foundation things are covered, then the next question is, well, are we doing the things that we need to do to maintain that culture and to maintain that safe space? And I'd like to think that my company actually does a very good job of that, because the reality is, as a CMO or even as a marketing function, you can't do that on your own. If the CEO is not aligned, if the leadership team, if the people team, the HR team is not aligned, then your efforts are going to be quite an uphill battle there. I'm not sure how successful you'll be, but the culture has to be something that the entire leadership team and indeed the wider organization is totally bought into to get that to work.
And you mentioned that JMMB Group has a unique culture in comparison to maybe other comparable organizations, like other financial
Yeah.
services companies. What do you think is that big difference there? What is so unique about it, do you think?
I think what's unique about it comes from the vision of the founder and why she founded the organization in the first place. So it's really a co-founder. There are two founders, male and female, but certainly for her, this is the female co-founder. She was always someone who believed in the equality of human beings, right? Her big core belief was that all human beings were created equally. We are equal, and we all have inherent greatness within us. And the way to unleash that greatness is through the power of love. So she wanted to create a financial institution at the time that was built on this core value of love. And again, not romantic love, it's love in the sense that we recognize that as human beings being equal, how do we support and build each other up in delivering not only financial services, but helping people to achieve their financial goals and dreams. And that's where it all started. So that's the basis on which the company was founded. And so everything feeds out of that. That purpose drives everything. It drives our people policies. It drives our fee policies. There are certain things we will and will not charge fees for because they go against the very core of who we say we are as a company, because we don't believe that has our clients' best interests at heart. And again, going back to the place of love, it's a love that motivates our employees to serve our clients. And it's just such a powerful, powerful foundation that we have as a company. And we've been able to thankfully maintain very deliberately because we protect it so vigorously, because it's just who we are as an organization. And that's where I encourage people to start. It starts with your why, it starts with your purpose. And if you remain aligned around that, then everything becomes easy after that.
Well, we'll see if it's easier easier or not. But I think that's a good piece. You have this foundation in place, and that's really your step one
Hmm.
in this framework is to get folks aligned around the brand's mission and overall vision, purpose. So once you have that in place and you feel
Yes.
like you have that safe space created, everyone is aligned there. The next step that you alluded to was helping employees then build their own personal brand
Yes.
online. So what components are a part of that from your perspective?
So the first thing, again, well, we started off from the safe space, and I think I can't answer this question without going back to that safe space, because I think that's what's the bone of contention that's happening in a lot of companies. A lot of companies are not comfortable with the idea of their employees building their personal brands. And the discomfort comes from the fact that they're afraid that the employees are going to go out there. It's two reasons really, I find, in the main. One, they're afraid that the employees are going to go out there and go rogue and post stuff that's inconsistent with the values of the brand or what the brand says it stands for. But companies are also afraid that these employees are going to get poached, right? They're going to put themselves out there. Some other company is going to see how great they are and they're going to take them from us. And it's so terrible. But at the end of the day, we have to recognize that there's so many more benefits to employees building their personal brands than not, but it has to start from that safe space. Employees have to feel comfortable with being able to build those brands. And then once you have that safe space created, and I'll go quickly to what we did, is that we kind of threw the net out there and we're like, look, there are some people who are already actively building their own personal brands, and there are some people who wanted to. We said, hey guys, who wants to build and or grow their personal brands? And we kind of threw the net out there and we said, here's this opportunity. Come on board. We want to show you how we want to help you to do that. Right. And we
And
got
Kerry-Ann, real quick, just to
sure.
get just to get some context, when you threw out that net, like how large? I know JMMB services over like 300,000 customers, right? But
Right.
how big is the team that you're talking about when you said that you casted that net?
Right. So, we have about employees, we're numbering maybe about 1,500 right now, give or
Okay.
take. So we would have basically just sent an email blast. I
Hmm.
mean, as simple as it sounds, we just sent an email blast to everybody. And we said, we're rolling out this program. We didn't really say what it was, but we just said, look, if you want to grow and or start building your personal brand, answer this email. We want to have a conversation with you. That's basically what we said. And we had about 300 people respond
Oh,
initially.
wow.
They were, I think, probably maybe curiosity, but a lot of people were clearly very interested. And we had this massive Zoom call where we said, this is what this is all about. And this is what it's going to take. Because the other thing is, too, we also have to be real. A lot of people want to say they want to build a personal brand, but a lot of them don't recognize the work that's going
Yeah.
to be involved in understanding how to do it, how to create, build content, create a community, manage a community, etc. And so after that initial call of about 300 people, for those people who, once they understood what was involved, who came back to us, I'd say we came down to maybe about just under 30 at the time, 30 people. And we started this program, and we called it the Ambassador Program, which is, of course, just an internal nomenclature that we use. And it started from, well, how are we going to help this ambassador team to build their brands? And it started with training courses. So we invited personal brand experts to kind of come in and have the conversation with the team, talking about how to build a brand on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on social, what's involved with that. How do you set up a framework to understand what your brand is and what it stands for? What do you want to represent? And then we also use the opportunity to engage those employees who are already way down the road with building their brands. There are some employees who had things like travel blogs and life coaching businesses who are producing great life inspiring content. How can we bring them on board? And we had sessions with them again, all on, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, and they would come and share how did they do it? How did their journey start? What were the pitfalls that they had to avoid? What were some of the lessons that they learned? Because it was really about helping the team to understand how to start, how to grow, and also to inspire and encourage each other as well, building a sense of community among those employees who said, yes, I want to start getting serious about building my own personal brand online. So yeah, that's basically what we did and where we started.
And take me back, Carrie, into that Zoom meeting. You have
Hmm.
300 people in attendance. Everyone's
Hmm.
raising their hand. They're like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, I want to be part of this. I want to build my personal brand." So, what did that presentation look like? Was that something that you all? Because I don't suspect that you had like a presentation built. You sent this email out to
Yeah.
everyone. You wanted to gauge interest, but now you have to actually put the wheels in motion here. So, what happened there with the actual Zoom meeting? What did you present and go through?
Yeah. So what we really did was we had a very honest conversation. And I think probably that's why we got down from 300 to 25.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, I like to say to tell people that, it's all about being authentic and realistic about what you can expect. Because when we talk about personal branding, I think it's a very glamorous nomenclature that's being bantered about, in various corners because it sounds really sexy. But it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of time, effort, energy. And we wanted to be super clear and authentic with the team about what it's going to take. So we spoke about the fact that, content is going to be created. We would have a bank of content that you can pull on if you'd like. But you can create your own content, but it's going to require you putting yourself out there, making yourself available, building a community, answering questions, responding to comments, committing to a routine cadence of content creation or posting, whatever the case may be, that people can rely on. All of these things that are part of building a brand and creating a community around your brand, we were super, super clear and authentic with them about what that's going to take. And also the undercurrent is that you have to be also authentic that you're a JMMB employee as well. So you can't be out there pretending to be someone you're not or hiding in some other corner. We were very clear about that. You are a JMMB employee. You're representing the brand as well, whether you like it or not. So if you're not willing to check all of these boxes or to commit to all of these boxes to check them, then maybe this is not for you. But we just wanted to be very clear and authentic about what's required. And again, I think that's what probably moved the needle from 300
Yeah.
down to under 30, but that's okay. We need to be able to do that because we don't want people to start down the road and then they realize it's something it wasn't and it doesn't work out.
Yeah. So that's interesting. So you start with this initial group around 300, shows up on Zoom. They get kind of the idea of what's involved. They get the
Mm-hmm.
gist there. And then you whittle it down to 25 to 30 folks that are very committed.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you're there, we can go to that third piece, which is, let me just pull it back up here. It was, letting employees create and share content,
Mm-hmm.
which is like, okay, you have the mission and vision in place. You have safe space. All right. Now you're embracing this as an organization where you want to support people to grow their personal brands. And then the third step is actually executing on it,
Mm-hmm.
it seems like. So how do you connect the dots as an organization? How do you support your employees in actually posting and sharing content online if you have like really strict corporate guidelines? Like how do you wrestle with that as a company?
Right. And it's a valid concern, and I know a lot of companies have it. I mean, the first thing is we have our own social media policies and guidelines in place, right? And I encourage all companies to do that. So all employees at the company, it's a standard part of our onboarding process and ongoing training that they're super clear around what our social media policy is. And the social media policy guides employees about recognizing how they need to show up online and how they should not be showing up online, right? Because at the end of the day, whether you like it or not, as an employee, you represent the brand. That's how people see you. And so we want employees to be very clear about that. So having those policies in place, I think not only provide a foundation, but they also provide a certain layer of protection for those companies who are concerned that, you could have employees going rogue, right?
Yeah.
So that's the first order of business. But the next thing is that what we also do is we let employees know that they have the choice and the freedom to approach building their brand in a way that suits them. So there are some employees who, and these are the folks more so on the front line, because like the sales team, they got a sales target to hit. So yeah, I want some personal branding to hit that
Yeah.
target, and that's okay. They would probably more want some financial content because that's our business. That's what we do. And we say, hey, look, here is a bank, and we create a nice repository in a nice shared location online, password protected, that they can go in and pull stuff and they can use and post or recalibrate and use in their own personal content and channels on LinkedIn or Twitter, what have you. And they're grateful for that because it takes a lot of the load off of them, and they can pull it and they can we tell them what they can do. They can change the captions, whatever, and they can put that content out there. So they have the choice to do that. But they're also told, hey, you have the choice to develop your own content if you have a passion that works for you. So again, I lead by example. I'm the CMO, right? I don't post anything on my personal pages about how great JMMB is and the products that we serve, we offer, and the people that we serve. I don't do any of that. Most of my content is around internal marketing,
Mhm.
leadership, and culture, and that's my focus. And that's okay, right? People would probably think, but you're the CMO. You should be talking about how awesome JMMB is. Well, the reality is, I don't believe so, because at the end of the day, I'm still representing the brand. I'm still the CMO of JMMB. The fact that my content isn't about JMMB is not a problem because I'm still CMO of the JMMB Group. I still get people coming into my DMs asking for jobs,
Yeah.
soliciting business from JMMB. It's still a thing because I represent the brand no matter what. And I think that's what companies need to be comfortable with, just to go back to a previous point. But what I found also important as well when we spoke about getting these folks off the ground was helping them to understand how do you get started, because there were a lot of them who didn't know what the baby steps were that they could take, right?
Yeah.
So when we talk about providing chunks of content was one thing, or telling folks you can do your own content was another, there were some people who were like, well, I don't know if I want to do the cut and paste thing. I'd love to be a little bit more authentic in my content generation, but I'm just scared. When I go on LinkedIn, I see all these fantastic people who are spitting out these awesome posts, and I'm just afraid. And then we start giving them tips. We're like, well, start in the comments. Just start commenting. So that's how we do it. It's really about helping folks to get started while having the things in place that we know that are required to protect the brand, and giving people a choice to approach it from an angle that they're comfortable with.
Yeah, and how do you balance that, at least from your perspective? I mean, you talked a little bit about how you really don't talk about the company really much at all
Mhm.
in the content that you share. So then you mentioned some folks had already built some content online, like whether it's a travel blog or something like that. But how do you mix those? If you're an organization, you're trying to build the personal brands of individuals, how, is there a recommendation there that you say, hey, maybe you mix things up in this way? Do you give folks a blank canvas? Like where does that balance exist, do you think?
I think the balance exists based on the objectives that you're trying to achieve as a company. And what I've found is different companies have different objectives when it comes to this whole thing called employee advocacy. Now, I'll just speak about the two angles that I'm aware of from an objective perspective. So for JMMB, we're largely B2C, I'm going to confess. We do serve
Hmm.
business and retail clients. So we do have a B2B side to our business, and we do have the B2C. Most of our clients are B2C. Our employee advocacy thrust is largely B2C in the sense that what we're trying to do is just generate demand for the brand in these consumer spaces, right? And so for us, it's not a very strict formal structure that we've put in place where employee advocacy is concerned. We're just like, look, we're going to empower you, go out and do it. And if you want to use our content, fine. If you want to curate your own or create your own, that's fine too. But just go out there and do your thing. And that's kind of what we've been doing. But there are other companies, more so in the B2B space, I find, that tend to be a little bit more structured, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to either be a part of or drive certain conversations. So there's some companies, for instance, let's say I'm in the telecom sector, and there's some conversations happening around new technologies in telecoms, right? If I want to start to be a part of those conversations, when what I find they do in those instances is that they work with their employee advocacy team of employees to say, hey, uh, we want to talk to these people in these spaces about these topics. Can you be commenting on their posts? Can you create or curate content that's going to be a part of this conversation? Because what we want folks to do is to see you as representatives of the organization in this topic or in this space that's that looks like you're kind of thought leaders in this space, in this
Hmm.
conversation. How can we show ourselves as being present to what's happening in the industry coming from this perspective? So they tend to be a little bit more formal, and they tell the team, look, use these particular hashtags when you're posting so they can track what's happening there, and they measure and all of that kind of stuff, and they can calculate things like their reach and engagement. So to me, again, it depends on the objective. As I said, there are some who are less formal, like we are, and then there are some that are more structured. So I would say, depending on your objective, that should guide how you create that framework for your employee advocacy to work and thrive.
And Carrie, when you're rolling this out, we had that core group, that cohort of 25 to 30 people that
Mhm.
said, yes, we're going to go ahead and stick this out. Like what's been like one of the hardest things that you've seen, since you're rolling this out and you kind of discovered it yourself? What was pretty hard about the process, do you feel?
I would would say what's hard is it wasn't so much the process. I think what's hard is the people component in the sense
Hmm.
that even with the 25 people, 25, just under 30 people, you still over time may lose some folks again as they get deeper into the process of understanding what it really takes to build a personal brand, build and grow a personal brand. I think that's the hardest component because it's really a very, very difficult road. I don't think a lot of people understand the value of what it takes when you talk about showing up on LinkedIn a certain number of times a week. And not only, again, it's not just about creating, curating, and posting, it's about responding to comments. It's about finding other people in this space and engaging with them and commenting on other people's posts. It's about, keeping abreast of what are the topics that folks are talking about in your industry or in your area of interest to make sure that you're a part of those conversations so that people see you. And I think that when people come in and they start and it's like, okay, this seems doable. When life gets in the way, it can get very, very hard. Not all of us have a team of content creators behind us, graphic artists, where they're
Right.
plugging through with Canva and that kind of thing. It's hard. And I think that for me would be the most difficult component is the people part. It's how do people stay the course and how do you support them as best as possible as far as engaging them to stick through and stay committed to the process. It's hard.
Yeah. And how have you all monitored things or like at least, measured like the progress of this cohort of folks? What does that look like?
hmm Well, again, for our in our perspective, rather, or in our sphere, we tend to be pretty informal with things. So what we do is we are tracking things through things like social media mentions, engagement, and sentiment, right? So with these wonderful apps that we use to track those sort of things, we look at, well, what are the JMMB mentions that are happening relative to the number of mentions of our competitors, right?
Hmm.
Same thing with brand sentiment. In those mentions, where do we see positive, negative, or neutral sentiments being mentioned or being said? And we compare those again with our competitors. And that's where, to me, the big win is because the reality is that when you have individual, independent people talking about your brand a lot in a very positive way, that's stuff that money can't buy. And again, I wouldn't be able to drive that with a marketing budget. I like to tell people, I was having a conversation the other day, when I compare my marketing budget to some of my larger competitors, it's like cheese to chalk. I don't have their money. It is what it is.
Yeah.
But when I do my brand awareness studies, or when again I'm measuring brand sentiment, brand mentions, and that sort of thing, share of voice, we tend to outpace them many months out of the year when I'm tracking on a monthly, weekly basis because people are having conversations independent of us. Sometimes we just need to just sit back and allow people to carry the message because it's so powerfully carried both by our employees and ultimately by our customers as well. So yeah, that's how we measure it, and it's been wonderful. And even my CEO, who is so bought into especially the power of social, because that's what you can see. 'Cause you got social, you got dark social. We can't see what's
Hmm.
going on in dark, but certainly on the social side, he himself will see what's going on and what people are saying online, and it's just wonderful. It's just wonderful. So for me, that's how we track our success, and it's been great.
Carrie, and you mentioned something else too, where you had like a content library that was available where people could go and at
Mhm.
least get some of that initial content, some of the foundation. What does that look like? Are you using a platform for that? Is it on Google Drive or some other shared,
Yeah, simple
network?
as
What
that.
is it?
Well, yeah, it's our intranet, In our intranet, we got some shared folders where people can go in and download stuff. So we keep videos there, infographics, copy blogs that they can go in and they can pull and use however they like. So they can use the infographics as they are right there, or they can use the videos, or they can take a blog post and take a snippet out of it and kind of play with it and do with it as they wish. So yeah, it's as simple as that, just a nice shared folder of stuff that they can go in and access when they need to.
And I was just thinking here. So a couple of the terms that I often see is, there's marketing to internal employees, and then there's also employee advocacy.
Right.
Kind of a couple different pieces there. One
Mm-hmm.
seems a little bit more proactive,
Mm-hmm.
where you're communicating internally. And then the other one is advocacy, which seems like it's more supportive. But where do those two things intersect, do you
Mm-hmm.
think?
Mm-hmm. Well, just to be clear, I think that's a great question. Employee advocacy is the objective of internal marketing. So you do internal marketing to get to employee advocacy. Because internal marketing is about engaging and empowering employees to become advocates of the brand. So there are a lot of companies who are like, oh, we want to do employee advocacy. Okay. So here's the content. Here's the access link. You can go in here, just click, cut, paste, and post. Okay, everybody click post now. I mean, that's not employee advocacy, respectfully. That's probably what you could call employee content sharing, maybe.
Hmm.
But why we call it advocacy and why internal marketing is so important is that what you're trying to drive is not even just so much making them aware of the vision, the mission, the purpose, the products, and the services, but what you're also really trying to get to is onboarding them in that what I call the emotional connection to the brand. Are they really bought into the brand and what the brand says it does and what it provides? That's really what it comes down to. Because a lot of companies, again, just believe that employees are kind of like, oh, they're robots. We pay them to do it, so they got to do it. At the end of the day, it's about authenticity. And we know this, right? Building a personal brand on social. When I put stuff out there and I talk about JMMB, if I choose to talk about JMMB, people can pick up lack of authenticity. So to create that authenticity, employees really have to be bought in. And that's why internal marketing is so important. If employees aren't bought in, then it's going to come out in how they share it, in how they put their content out. And you don't want that. Inauthenticity is something we really don't want as a brand. So for me, that's where it starts. It's internal marketing leading to employee advocacy, because without it, it's not going to be successful.
Yeah, thanks for distinguishing those two there, one driving the
The
other. And
other.
leads me to my next question, maybe a bit of free consulting that I'm asking for here from you, Kerry-Ann. But
Sure.
like if you were a CMO and you're launching this big initiative, let's say it is a podcast. A lot of the companies we work with, it's their first podcast. It's their first big initiative like this. And they often struggle to how to build some momentum internally. So how would you recommend that if you are launching a podcast and it's kind of like this community component, right? There are several folks involved with a podcast. You tend to have leadership that's either hosting or involved at some degree. And then you have some other internal folks that are working on reshaping or repurposing the content,
Hmm.
sharing that internally. But what would you do from your perspective? Like how would you launch that internal marketing component around a podcast?
Wow. So the first thing is, and it may be an unpopular answer, but I would say start from the place of, is a podcast the best thing for your company based on how your employees consume content, right? And,
Yeah.
I'm just going to keep it real, right, Tristan? Because at the end of the day, you may think you want a podcast and it sounds great because, that's what everybody's doing. But if you have, based on your culture or the team you have or the business that you're in, your employees just don't connect to podcasts, or they're not likely to kind of log on to that, then mentally or otherwise, maybe a podcast isn't for your company to have in your communication strategy internally. Just saying. So let's start
Yeah.
there. Understand how your employees want to consume content, right? Having done that, if you're convinced that a podcast is a way to do it, I would say, well, yeah, you have as you spoke to earlier, the nuts and bolts around getting it done. Put it out there, Put it out there to a few folks first. You want to test it. You want to concept test it. Have some employees listen to it. Employees who are not connected to the process at all. Employees who fall in the band of who it is you want to reach, right? So let's say you want to engage your sales team, or you want to engage folks in IT, or both. Have some folks listen to it and get their honest feedback. Is this something they'd listen to? Is there any change that they'd make to it? How do they recommend we tweak it if it needs to be tweaked? Does it hit the mark? Once you've tested it, again, assuming that it works, then put it out there. Having put it out there, and I'm talking now, blast it to whoever it is you want to blast it to internally. You want to start looking at those analytics. Are people downloading, clicking, and listening? All right. And if they're not, if they are, great. Let's start there. Let's start with the positive. If they are, great. If they're not, you're going to go and have to ask why. All right. I heard this awesome story about this company who was launching, in this case, it was a newsletter, right? I know some people don't like newsletters, but they're like, let's do a newsletter. And they thought it would have worked for them. And when they checked it out, folks weren't really downloading, reading, clicking, what have you. And when they did their research to say, well, we send this out, you guys aren't reading it. They're like, look, I don't have time to read a newsletter. If what you're going to say to me goes beyond 5 sentences, I'm not going to have time. And you know what? That's exactly what they did. They still had the newsletter, right, in the back.
Right.
But the email itself that they would send out initially had just 5 sentences, and those 5 sentences had the key messages that they wanted employees to come away with. So whether or not they clicked on that newsletter link, it's okay. Once they read those 5 sentences, they're good. And it's the same thing I'm suggesting for the podcast. If you believe still that the podcast is going to work, why is it that folks aren't listening? Is it that they would rather hear the news in the form of some music with a nice catchy beat? You know what I'm saying? Or maybe the podcast is 15 minutes long and I don't got more than 90 seconds, people. Give me a TikTok length podcast if you want me to listen to it. Yeah, tighten it up. Those are the things, so do the research. It's kind of, and I mean, this is stuff we would do in our external communications, right? Employ the same approach with your internal communications, your internal marketing. Do the research. Is this the right channel? Test it. Put it out there. Once it passes the test, put it out there. If it's not taking, continue to test and tweak until it is you're delivering something that your constituents want to hear.
Yeah, I love it. And the one unique thing about a podcast, because we get in these conversations a lot of times very, very early on in rolling out a show for a company. And it is like, how can we rally our employees around this? But I think the point that you made is there's a lot of internal qualitative feedback that you can gather, especially with a podcast versus some other content. Like if you just are rolling out blog posts and you're trying to get a lot of other folks to respond to that, I find it's much more difficult than if you could even involve other team members within the show itself. I mean, we see that a lot where, sales team members will come on the show and they're engaging with either an industry expert or a customer.
Yeah.
And you just get a little bit more collaboration there. And I think, internal marketing, at least from what I've seen, a big component of that is just collaborating and working together on content, which I think a lot of times, and I'm curious to get your thought, is marketing always feels like, or it seems like, here's some content. Can you guys push it out?
Yeah.
Versus like a little bit more back and forth. But what do you think about that?
Yeah, I'm totally on the same page with that, because ultimately, again, we have to remember that our employees are pretty much like our customers in the sense that we need to see them as an audience of people that we need to be super aware of what works for them and how important they are as a part of the conversation. And generally, I just find that marketers too, and we're victims of what we learned in marketing school. We were always taught to focus on the customer. But again, the reality is we have this army of employees that can support our objectives strategically. So we really just need to double down on how are we going to be engaging employees as well. They can be, in my opinion, even more powerful than your customers because they're on the inside. And so marketing, whether it is you're going to be partnering with internal comms to be able to do it, how are you rallying the leadership team around that? I think it's just such a powerful way that the marketing team can start to think about how can we shift our approach to engaging and empowering employees to be a part of the overall marketing message external.
Love it. And Kerry-Ann, just to kind of close things up here, I wanted to just shift to your podcast, the internal marketing podcast that you're running. And I know you've had over 20 episodes in place. What were the benefits of running a podcast and exploring that topic, do you feel?
Well, the benefits, I think, first of all, were, well, the biggest benefit for me was networking. It's really just been a powerful platform to create and build and grow relationships with like-minded people who are passionate about the conversation, and even some people who are not. Because I'll be honest, there were some of my guests who probably never even heard of the term internal marketing before the podcast,
Hmm.
but they were probably working in a way that supported internal marketing, because some of my guests have come from HR, culture, organizational development and leadership, digital marketing. And when I said, well, this is how what you can do, so how it can support employee engagement and advocacy. And they're like, wow, yeah, that's true. And it's how the conversation flowed. So building and growing relationships, I'd say, is the number one benefit. Obviously, it's had some personal branding benefit as well. I mean, I'm having a conversation with great folks like you right now. And I think I would say also it's been very gratifying to be a part of a conversation that I still think doesn't get the attention that it deserves, you know? And just being a part of a very unique niche conversation has been very gratifying. And yeah, I've just been very grateful to have the opportunity to be able to do it and to be a part of it as well.
Love it. And I know it's been a few weeks since the last episode, so
Yeah.
I was curious, what are your plans moving forward for the show? What does that look
Right.
like?
So yeah, so I've done 2 seasons. So I wrapped up season 2, you're right, and getting ready now to roll out with season 3. And I'm super excited. I'm already talking to several folks who I already have lined up to have conversations. And what we're really going to be digging more so into this season is in the space of employee advocacy, quite a bit. When we talk about thought leadership, how can we support employees to become influencers, to become thought
Mm.
leaders, to become subject matter experts, you know? I think there's so much room to explore the conversation, because I find folks are excited. More companies are recognizing, you know what, our employees, they're really powerful. They're a powerful tool that we can have in our arsenal. So how can we help them? How can we empower them and engage them? And so that's what we're going to be talking about primarily in season 3. So I'm excited. So folks can listen to the episodes that they've probably would have missed already, get caught up and get ready for season.
It's almost like how can you, even building on this conversation we've had, it's like, companies are supporting the personal brands of folks, but then how can you take it to the next level where you're actually positioning yourself as a leader in your space? So it's kind of taking it up a notch.
Exactly.
It sounds like with season 3. Well, carry in. Lastly, where can folks find out more about yourself and the podcast you run and JMMB Group, all these wonderful things you've talked about?
Great, thank you. Well, I am on LinkedIn, so I'm Kerry-Ann Betton Stimpson on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn and I'm on Twitter as well, so folks can reach out and connect with me there. I'm happy to talk to folks about all things marketing, leadership, and team building. The podcast is the Internal Marketing Podcast. If you Google it, it's going to come up. It's everywhere podcasts are, so feel free to subscribe and listen there. And of course, JMMB, we are jmmb.com, and we have operations in the Caribbean. So we are headquartered in Kingston, Jamaica, where I'm from, which is where I am right now. And we also have operations in the Dominican Republic and in Trinidad and Tobago as well. So we are a homegrown Caribbean company. Our clients, however, are all over the world, but we're happy to connect with anyone who's passionate about achieving their financial goals and dreams. So that's
Well, Carrie Ann, it was a pleasure today. I know this is going to be a big help for a lot of our customers and the folks that we work with. It's always a topic of discussion. How can we get employees more involved and how can they become, like you mentioned, thought leaders and industry experts in their space. And I think you have a good framework here that we went through.
Thank
So I
you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Tristan. I hope folks found this helpful. And again, they can feel free to reach out on LinkedIn or on Twitter if they want to continue the conversation there.
All right. Thank you, Carrie Ann.